Hey guys, Borish here. So I'm going to teach you today how to make some bread. So let's get started. Here are the things you need. Bread's a very straightforward thing to make. We need flour. All-purpose flour works just fine. Bread flour is fine. Don't use cake flour. You need water, just from the tap is fine. Salt, and then just a packet of yeast. If you want to make sourdough, you can have sourdough starter, and that's easy to make on your own, and maybe I'll do that in another video. In terms of material you need, you just need a regular mixing bowl here with a cotton towel put over. You will need a small digital scale to make sure everything's precise. And then you'll need a proofing basket. This is just for the last step. You don't really need it, but it just makes your bread come out a little nicer. And then we're going to bake it in a cast iron Dutch oven. So that's basically what we need. So now I'm going to go through each of the steps. And I want you to know there's a lot of flexibility. And feel free to experiment and try out different things and try different timing. I'm just going to show you what works for you. All right, let's bake some bread. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, guys, is activate the yeast, or the sourdough starter if that's what you're using. So I measured out 350 grams of water on my digital scale. You want to make sure that that water is about 100 to 120 degrees. If it's room temperature, the yeast won't rise fast enough, and if it's too hot, it'll kill the yeast off. So the best way to do this is to put your faucet on as high as it goes, wait till it heats up all the way, and then just take that. Okay, so I have 350 grams of water, so I'm going to take that and dump it all into my mixing bowl. All right, so I've set that aside. Next thing I'm going to do is take the yeast packet. Again, if you're using sourdough starter, just dump that in. For sourdough starter, I like about 140 grams of sourdough starter, and this is just regular active dry yeast, and I'm just using the whole packet for that. So I'm just going to take that, and then I'll dump the whole thing in. And you should see a little bit of frothing at the start, not too much, but that'll show up. And then this is important. Now you're going to take a little fork, and we're going to mix this up. So I just take a fork and I mix together, and it should make like a little bit of a cloudy thing, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So once I've mixed the water and the yeast really well, it should look something roughly like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to let this sit. Just the water and the yeast, I'm going to let this sit for about 15, 20, even 30 minutes. It's fine. We'll keep the clock on here, and I'll be back with the next step in a bit to add the flour and the salt. Thanks. Okay, so we've let that sit for a while. Now we're ready to go ahead and mix in the dry ingredients. So we use 350 grams of water. We're going to use 500 grams of flour, and that's the ratio you want. You want about 70% as much water as you have of the flour. Now, if you're using bread flour, you want to up that to about 72%, but everything else is going to be the same. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here, I just have this measuring cup ready. So we have, let's see, 145, so we'll dump that in. A little more here. I say the numbers out loud so I don't forget them. So at 165, so now we're up to 310. Now let's see, this is a big one here. And then that is too much. Good, okay, so we'll dump a little back. So we have 310, this is 180, so I just need about 10 more grams here. So let's see if I got that. Okay, that's about 30, so let's dump most of that out. Still a little much. Okay, and perfect. So there we go. So that's 500 grams. Now we're going to add in the salt. And this is just up to preference. I like about 9 grams of salt. If you want to do anywhere between 6 and 10, you could just do that to taste. You could do 12 if you like it really salty, but I think 9 puts it at a good level. So again, we want to be precise. This is just normal salt. You don't want to use kosher salt. It's too coarse. So I'm up to 9 grams there. Oops, a little more. Okay, so there we have 9 grams of salt. So now again, I'm going to dump that on top. You don't want to add this earlier because the salt can kill the yeast if you add it too soon. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together. So I'm just going to use a fork for this. So the water and the yeast is being mixed with the salt and the flour. And you want to make sure you really mix this together nicely. You don't need like a dough or a dough hook and a stand mixer or anything. A fork should do just fine, but you want to really make sure it's pretty uniform and you don't have too much flour sticking to the sides. And you want to really get it as well as you can into one kind of glob. It should start to smell really nice. Mine smells yeasty right now. Obviously you can't smell that, but if it has that yeast smell, that's a good sign that you didn't screw up with the yeast and kill it with too hot of water. Okay, so this looks good. You'll notice my dough is turned into kind of one big piece right here. And now we're going to let this sit for about half hour, and then we're going to start doing some stretch and folds. So when I'm done with this now, I'm going to cover this lightly with a damp towel. Doesn't need to be too wet. you don't want it to be dry or the bread will dry out too, I just put a damp towel over the top. You can just drizzle a little bit of water on your cloth towel. You can also just even wash your hands and then dry them on the towel. Okay, and we're going to let this sit for a little while, and we'll be back to do some kneading in a little bit. Thanks. Okay, so this next thing we're going to do is called stretch and folds, and you want to do anywhere from 2 to 4 sets of these. So what you do in these stretch and folds, you got your bag of flour. You want to put your hands in and just get a generous amount of flour on your hands, something like that, maybe even a little more. And then once you have a good amount, what you're going to do is you're going to fold it over, take a side, fold it over, and push. So you take a side, stretch it up, fold it over, and push. Take a side, and I'm going to do this maybe like twice around, so probably like 8 total stretch and folds. Anyway, so this process right here, this is strengthening the dough and kind of getting it ready. And if the dough is too wet at this point, you can add a little flour. If the dough is too dry, of course, you can add just a little bit of water. Just add like a tablespoon at a time or something. This texture is coming out great right now. This is a perfect consistency. Okay, you might need a little more flour if it gets sticky. The flour helps your hands from sticking to the dough. You'll need to wash your hands anyway. Okay, so what I've done looks good. So that's one set of stretch and folds. I'm going to cover it right now. What we're going to do is we're actually going to repeat this process anywhere from 1 to 3 more times. So you don't want to do this kind of throughout the bulk rise. I'm going to do this a little after 9. I'm going to do this again about 10, and then again probably a little before 11. And then we'll let it rest for a long time. And we're going to check again in the morning. This bulk rise could be anywhere from 8 hours to 20 hours, depending on how fast your bread is rising, the temperature, the humidity in the air. There are a lot of variables at work here, but we're going to kind of check in the morning, and I'll leave it alone. So again, you want to do these stretch and folds a set, just like I've done, anywhere from 2 to 4 times, and within probably the first 2 hours after you've done the mixing. All right, well, we've done the stretch and folds, and again, we'll just do this a couple more times. I'm not going to show that, but I'll see you guys in the morning. All right, well, I hope you had a good night's sleep. The bread certainly did. As you can see, it rose quite a bit here. Now, it actually had risen more, but my son gave it a big poke this morning, and that's why it's not quite so poofy. But this is good. So it probably more than doubled in size. You don't want it to get too big, because then it'll do something called overproofing. But it doubled in size. It fills up quite a bit of the bowl. So we're ready for the pre-shape, and this is going to be ready by lunch. So let's go ahead, get a little flour on our hands, and we're going to try and shape it into a circle. So what we do is we kind of gently work it away. And at this step, we want to be gentle. We don't want to poof kind of the air bubbles that have developed. The crust is kind of hardened overnight because it dried out, although that's okay. And as we take it away from the sides, you can see it really starts to deflate. And that's okay. So what we're going to do now is just a very quick motion. We're not going to work with it too much. We just want to turn it into a circle. So as we go around, we're going to take one side, pull it up, and put it towards the middle. We're going to take the other side, pull it up, put it towards the middle. Going to take the other side. So we're kind of creating a seam on the top here. Pull it up, put it towards the middle. Okay, and then for my fourth side, I'll pull that up and put it towards the middle. And it looks like I have to do a fifth side. But this is what it should look like. So if we take a look here, we have this seam right here where everything's going to come together. But if I were to take a look at the other side, we can see the other side is smooth. And I'm going to kind of turn this into more of a ball. I don't want to maneuver it too much, but I want kind of a ball shape like that. Okay, so that looks good. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the seam side down. So seam side goes down, and I'll cover it again with my damp cloth, always using a damp cloth to cover it. Keeps it from drying out. And I'm going to leave it like this for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll check on it then. Thanks. All right, well, we're ready for the last stage now. We're done with the pre-shape, so we're going to proof the bread. This is the very last step. So we need our proofing basket here. And what we're going to do is take a little bit of flour in our hand and just put a little bit over the proofing basket, and that'll make sure that the dough doesn't stick to the basket. I've done that once. It was a really ugly mess to clean up. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to take the dough and kind of dump it. So we want the smooth side to be down in the proofing basket. I'll just kind of dump it in. Okay, well, it's not coming out, so we'll need to help it a little bit. Now that didn't go well. That's fine. So we got it now. Notice how it's got some really nice air bubbles in. So I'm just going to put that down. Again, you don't want to manhandle it too much at this step. And then we'll go ahead and put the top on the proofing basket. And this is the final rise. This is where we're going to get the very last bit. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is turn the oven on. So we're going to turn the oven on to 450 degrees, 450. And this is important. Now, we're going to take our Dutch oven and put that in the oven. Okay, so you want to make sure you have lots of room. So we need to make sure to move the rack down. I put the top in separately from the Dutch oven itself. Okay. And then there we go. So that's on. we're going to let this proof. We're going to let the oven heat up with a Dutch oven, and I'll see you in 45 minutes. All right, well, the bread is proof, the oven is preheated. Let's go ahead and cook this thing. So be sure you're very careful taking this out. It's really hot, of course. So I'm going to take out the Dutch oven, leave the pan in there for now. I'm going to set it down right here. Okay, so now we're going to take the bread, we're going to flop it over. I just put this onto a piece of parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, you can just put it right in the Dutch oven. It'll be just fine. It's just a little easier to clean up with the paper. Okay, so here's our loaf of bread. We can see it's a circle. If you want to shape it a little bit so it's more circular, you can. Now we're going to score the bread, and this just helps it look nice. So just take a normal serrated knife, and I usually just cut a little slice, maybe a couple inches long, on each of the 4 sides separated by 90-degree angles. You can score it in other things if you like different decorations, that's fine. Okay, now carefully we're going to grab the parchment paper and put it back in the Dutch oven without burning ourselves. So we'll just pop that in. Whoop. Okay. And now, just carefully, we'll open the door and quickly put this in. All right, so we'll put this in. We're going to put the top on. That's important. We need to cover it. Okay? And now we're going to cook it for 20 minutes at 450 degrees. And in that time, we'll take it off, and I'll see you guys then. Well, it's been 20 minutes at 450. Now we're going to take it out. We're going to take the top on. We needed the top for the first part, not the second part. And now I'm going to set the timer here for about 30 minutes. Okay. And now this is important. I need to change the oven temperature as well. So I'm going to turn the oven temperature down to 425. Okay, this is getting kind of warm, so I'm going to set this down. So we're going to cook this for about 30 minutes at 425. And, you know, that's a preference thing. If you like it a little darker or crispier, cook it for 32. If you like it a little lighter, maybe try 28. And obviously that depends on your oven as well. All right, well, we'll be back in 30 minutes to take this out of the oven. All right, well, this has been in for half an hour, so let's go ahead and take this out. Oh, it smells terrific. All right, so we're going to go ahead and set it down over here. Very hot, of course. Now, you want to take it out of the Dutch oven because the Dutch oven is very hot. So we're going to pick this up with a spatula, just one hand, and then put it on a drying rack. Okay, and now let's let it cool for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have some delicious bread to eat. Just slice in and go to work. All right, well, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope this was useful, and I hope you enjoy baking your own bread. I'll see you around.